For 3,000 years, flight was an idea that never got off the ground. When it finally did, it soared suddenly into the cosmos above all expectations. Flight has changed man's world, changed his life, changed his perception. The astonishing advances in aerodynamics have opened new horizons in travel, communications, defense. No technology in history ever bounded ahead as quickly as aircraft design. A man born before the Wright brothers first flew could pilot a supersonic jet before his 45th birthday. Travel calculated in months at the turn of the century was determined in hours by the middle of it. The awesome power and immaculate aerodynamics of today's aircraft has made flight not only an essential of modern life, but a standard of grace. The brilliant achievements of modern aviation are totally evolutionary. A high-performance jet fighter is a comfortable companion to its World War II counterpart. Eastern and Western technology meld comfortably on the flight line. The genealogy of the airplane is well preserved around the globe it has made smaller by enthusiasts who turn the past into the present. As quickly as a new generation of aircraft left the drawing board, the old was discarded. Some airplanes were obsolete before they flew. Others saw long service, but were neglected when technology flew faster than they. An ordinary old airplane to the unknowing is a jewel box of aviation history to the informed. Only through the efforts of dedicated visionaries is aircraft history kept alive. Yet even the earliest aircraft are seldom relegated to the museum. They are a living, vibrant passion. Many of the quantum leaps in aircraft technology were products of military necessity, although the military were among the last to see the strategic and tactical advantage of flight. The First World War ended the airplane's novelty, the days when it was a fairground curiosity with little more purpose than to set distance and endurance records. For the first time, the entire world became aware of the significance of aircraft and the people who built them. Their names still resonate today: Fokker, Spad, Newport, Sopwith. The men who mastered them became legend. Germany's Red Baron, Manfred von Richthofen. America's Eddie Rickenbacker. France's Roland Garros. The men and machines formed squadrons of awesome repute. The Flying Circus, Les Sicons, the Lafayette Escadrille. In a mix of fiction and fact, Snoopy of the comics does frequent battle with the Red Baron. Their Sopwith Camel and Fokker triplane were and are realities of the progress of flight. Prior to the First World War, aerial maneuvers were considered stunts, diversions for a curious public. Entertainment quickly became existence when the maneuverability of a plane spelled out the stark terms of life and death. Close combat dictated that the pilot present an elusive target, at the same time jockeying to get the opponent in his gun sights. The qualities that made an airplane a worthy foe in a dogfight made it a pleasure to manipulate after the hostilities. The huge surplus of aircraft after the armistice dulled further development into the 1930s. Then advances in engines and engineering overtook the aging equipment, and a new generation of aircraft left the boards. This Focke-Wulf Steiglitz trainer of 1932 is an important example of the highly aerobatic trainers that were to cradle the future pilots of the following war. It was used extensively by the embryo Luftwaffe and other European air forces, as well as South America, where a large number are still flown. Aerodynamic lessons learned in the heat of combat were the foundation for the rapid growth of commercial and general aviation that were to follow the war. The famed Piper Cub became the basic trainer of countless pilots who were to discover the convenience and sport of flight. More than 40,000 Piper Cubs were built beginning in the 1930s, marking it as the most widely produced aircraft in history. A contemporary of the Piper Cub was the remarkable Chrysler Storch, an observation plane that could become airborne almost in its own length and land at 25 miles per hour. These qualities allowed the first German officers to occupy Paris in 1940 by landing a pair of the Chryslers in the Place de la Concorde. To restore and maintain a 50-year-old machine like the Storch calls for engineering and ingenuity. Broken and missing parts have to be crafted individually by hand. Years of neglect have to be stripped and sanded away. Enthusiasts scour the earth for vintage planes to be brought back as nearly as possible to original specifications, then retrace their steps seeking authentic engines and components. What cannot be found has to be fabricated. Some vintage aircraft are more replacement parts than original, but look identical to the day they first flew. After months and even years of work, the restored craft is ready to perform what gave it its name. The Greek word aeroplanus, wandering about in the air. Anyone with a feeling for aircraft would agree it worth any amount of hours to see a classic restored to the sky. This immaculate fairy swordfish is an apt example. Referred to in its day as the string bag, the Royal Navy plane was a flying enigma. It was a three-man, open cockpit biplane, virtually out of the First World War, thrown into battle against the vastly more sophisticated equipment of the Second. Yet it probably accounted for the sinking of more enemy tonnage than any other plane. Its slow bulkiness was compensated by maneuverability and stableness at low speeds. These allowed it to gain immortality in the sinking of the battleship Bismarck. While 2,400 of the fairy swordfishes were ultimately built, this is the only one in the world still flying. Another unique machine with even more singular replacement problems is the Yak-11, certainly the only Russian warplane in private hands. This one experienced engine failure over Cyprus and eventually found its way to England. As the Russians claimed that none were ever lost, they could hardly ask for its return. A tandem seat advanced trainer, it has a maximum speed of 290 miles an hour, and its short, light wings and concentration of weight give it spectacular roll and vertical power and make it a favorite at air shows. Alone among post-war airplanes, it depends on compressed air rather than hydraulics for all servo-assist operations, including starting. The Lancaster, the supreme expression of the British heavy bomber. It was exactly the right machine at the right time. Simple and quick to build and maintain, incredibly rugged, effortless to fly, capable of carrying extremely heavy loads. Formations of thousands droned nightly from England to Germany and Italy. It gained additional fame with the dam busters, the breaching of the Mon and Iter dams, and the sinking of the battleship Tirpitz. A design advance on the earlier unsuccessful Manchester bomber, the Lancaster was a winner from its first flight and remained essentially unchanged until it went out of production. It was designed to carry 4,000 pounds of bombs when it first flew in 1941. 4 years later, that capacity had increased more than 5 times over, with little more modification than increased engine power. The Royal Air Force retired the venerable Lancaster in 1956. but both the Canadian and French flew them into the mid-1960s. A companion to the Lancaster was the Supermarine Spitfire, one of the most famous aircraft ever flown. The 23,000 built were the core of the RAF Fighter Command throughout World War II. The Hurricane, in formation here with the Spitfire and Lancaster, actually did most of the fighting during the Battle of Britain in 1940, shooting down more enemy aircraft than all other RAF planes combined. All three World War II classics are flown and maintained on a voluntary basis by RAF pilots and ground crews. The greatest bomber of the time was built as a commercial venture in 1935 by a country that had no need for it. America's Boeing built the prototype B-17 Flying Fortress in a competition for a strategic bomber for the Air Corps, although the U.S. was out of bomb range of any likely enemies and equally beyond the range of any likely targets. Very few foresaw that 13,000 would be constructed during the next decade, and mass formations of fortresses would fight in every theater of the war. The B-17 was the ultimate deep penetration, high-altitude precision bomber. Despite its immense bulk, it was agile and gentle to fly. Its ability to sustain damage and return home has never been surpassed. The Flying Fortress set the stage for daylight bombing armadas capable of fighting their way through the strongest fighter opposition and making accurate attacks on individual targets. The four 9-cylinder radial Wright engines gave the B-17 4,800 horsepower and some models a top speed in excess of 300 miles per hour. The turbocharged engines were capable of performing at 35,000 feet, vastly higher than most other bombers of the time. The Flying Fortress was the only Air Corps plane in operation at the beginning of the war that was still on frontline duty at the end. Many experts rate the North American P-51 Mustang the best all-around fighter of the Second World War. Many others rate it as the most aesthetically pleasing. American bomber pilots did not dispute either claim, as the Mustang was the first fighter capable of escorting them to their target and back. In an era when design of new aircraft can consume more than a decade, the Mustang seems astonishing. From conception until the plane first rolled down the runway took only 102 days. It was then in service around the world for the next quarter century. The Mustang was valued for its combination of speed, maneuverability at all altitudes, long range, and adaptability to many roles. What was to become the backbone of the American fighter force was not even ordered by the U.S. until already in service with the RAF. The British had commissioned it from North American Aviation and had the confidence to order 320 of the aircraft before it existed. Some models of the P-51 were capable of 465 miles per hour, and later versions could perform at over 40,000 feet. Aerobatics are probably as old as the Wright brothers' second flight. Once man proved he could fly, he found it great sport. The Royal Jordanian Falcons show the formation flying and synchronized aerobatics that span the eras of barnstorming and jet-age precision. Their planes, the American Pitts Special, was designed specifically for aerobatics, capable of withstanding the enormous stresses of aerial choreography. Constructed of wood, metal, and fabric, the Pitts Special weigh only half as much as the family car, yet perform at over 200 miles per hour when diving. Air forces around the globe have fielded aerobatics teams as a method of sharpening and maintaining the skills of their top pilots. It is also a boost to the national image. The sport of aerobatics is now highly organized, with national and world championships staged every year. The Pitts Special, which flies equally well inverted as the right way up, is also the plane selected by the Marlboro Aerobatics team. The three-member Marlboro team have proved popular at air shows in England and on the continent. Their Pitts Specials were first designed in 1946, but have been constantly refined and upgraded like a Formula One car. Like their counterparts in the Marlboro Pit Specials, jet aerobatic teams require hundreds of hours of practice before they take off for a performance. Jet formation aerobatics is the highest form of the sport, with additional maneuvers made possible by the vast increase in power. Only military teams have the skills and equipment for jet formation aerobatics, but the spirit of the sport is the same as their civilian counterparts. La Patrie de France, the French Air Force aerobatic team, perform in the Alpha jet at speeds near the sound barrier. The Alpha is one of the latest in a new generation of joint aeronautic projects between a consortium of countries designed and produced by France and Germany. Conceived as a trainer, the Alpha's twin engines give it additional capability as a light strike and reconnaissance plane. It also affords spectacular results aerobatically. France has long been on the leading edge of the study of flight, and many credit the brothers Etienne and Joseph Montgolfier as the first to become airborne in a hot air balloon 2 centuries before the Wright brothers flew. The latest French instrument of flight, the Alpha, has been adopted as an advanced trainer by Belgium and 4 African nations, in addition to France and Germany. The old and new of aviation has always attracted enormous audiences. Massive crowds of thousands greeted pioneer crossings of the English Channel and the Atlantic Ocean. Today, crowds of over 400,000 are not unusual at weekend air shows and tattoos, making it arguably the most heavily attended spectator sport in the world. Air shows are also among the most international of sports, with entrants in aerobatic competition traveling from around the globe. One air tattoo favorite is the trim, 2-seat, twin-engine Saab 105. A trainer which can double as a multi-role tactical fighter. Its ability to operate from rough terrain and country roads, yet perform flashingly in the air, appeals to small countries with manifold defense requirements, such as Sweden, where it is built, and Austria, which has equipped its air force with it. The Austrian Karo Oss aerobatics group perform in the Saab, which is capable of over 600 miles per hour, a high speed for a basic trainer. For many air forces, aerobatics are the critical training ground for pilot skills taught in combat in earlier generations. Another small country, Switzerland, opted for the Hawker Hunter for their Patrie Suisse. The Hunter became the most successful post-war British fighter and was manufactured extensively in the Netherlands and Belgium as well. The aerobatic platform of the Swiss team has always been a thoroughbred and a pilot's favorite. Nearly 2,000 were built, and large numbers are still in service in 17 countries around the world. A superb all-around combat aircraft, It is now recognized that had another 1,000 been built, they would still find ready customers through the 1980s. One of the most distinctive planes ever designed, the Hawker-Siddeley Vulcan was created by essentially the same team that built the Lancaster. The British Air Ministry in 1947 called for a plane capable of twice the speed and twice the altitude ceiling of existing bombers, or 600 miles per hour and 50,000 feet. The Delta Wing Vulcan was the answer, entering service in 1956 after 4 years of flight testing. The 4-engined, 5-man bomber was an instant success, meeting speed and altitude requirements, but handling like a fighter. It was this ability that gave the Vulcan a second life in the 1960s, when high-flying bombers became vulnerable to advanced electronics and missiles. The Vulcan was converted to a ground-hugging attack bomber able to penetrate under the enemy's radar. Like the classic American B-52 of the 1950s, the Vulcan continued to be a valuable strategic weapon into the 1980s. The unique shape of the Vulcan stemmed from the simplest of engineering expediencies. The original drawings engendered a plane of twice the stipulated weight. To reduce it, eliminate the tail section. The vast Delta wing solved the stability problem and was deep enough to accommodate the fuel and engines. At air shows, the Vulcan became known for the near-stall turns executed after an initial climb of unbelievable steepness. No other airplane of such size and mass ever had such nimble flight characteristics. The Vulcan seemed again near retirement in 1982, but was once more given new life. Refitted with conventional ordnance, it continued as Britain's sole long-range tactical bomber. No one who has ever seen the Vulcan fly will forget it. The Canadian Starfighters aerobatic team opened their performance with a formation takeoff. Their Lockheed F-104 Starfighter was the first combat craft capable of sustained speeds of more than Mach 2, and, with a wingspan of 6.7 meters, was the smallest American service aircraft ever built. Developed in the early 1950s with an eye toward superior flight performance rather than heavy electronics, it eventually saw duty with the air arms of 20 nations. Several starfighters were modified for astronaut training with NASA, and one, with rocket boost, set a world altitude record of over 23 miles in 1963. Originally an American project, the bulk of the starfighters to sea service were constructed in Germany, Italy, Japan, and Canada. It is an old adage in physics that, aerodynamically, it should be impossible for a bee to fly. The Hawker Harrier is the bee of aircraft, a machine with the hovering, takeoff, and landing capabilities of a helicopter, yet the ability to rocket off at supersonic speeds. The Harrier utilizes the enormous thrust of its Rolls-Royce engine, diverted through 4 controllable nozzles to move in any direction the pilot desires, freeing the craft from dependence on airfields or aircraft carriers. The potential of operating a supersonic craft from the front lines appealed to the U.S. Marines, who became the largest single customer for the British plane. The Harriers for the Marines are now made by joint production of Hawker, part of British Aerospace, and America's McDonnell Douglas. While capable of vertical takeoff and landing with deflected thrust, the Harrier can move out at Mach 1 and climb at a rate of nearly 10 miles a minute in conventional flight. Italy's aerobatic specialists, the Frecce Tricolori, fly the Fiat G91, a single-seat strike fighter and reconnaissance aircraft. Its power plant can push it well beyond 600 knots in the latest variation of a plane that first flew a quarter century earlier. The very qualities that have made the G91 an enduring military success continue to make it a brilliant performer in aerial ballet. The G91 is the product of a 1953 NATO search for a light tactical fighter, rugged, easy to maintain, and able to operate from rough forward airstrips. West Germany and Portugal have been equipped with the latest versions, in addition to the Italian Air Force. The Panavia Tornado is the multi-aircraft, multinational in concept and multi-purpose in use. It is the product of the combined efforts of the British, German, and Italian aerospace industries. Its mission is essentially everything required of a modern military aircraft: close air support, long-range interdiction and strike, naval service, air superiority, defense, reconnaissance, and training. To fulfill all these functions, the three nations designed a two-seat, swing-wing, twin-engine craft that is, they claim, less expensive than any other airplane in its class. More than 800 of the Mach 2 aircraft were ordered prior to becoming operational. It is capable of speeds of over 1,300 miles an hour and altitudes in excess of 50,000 feet. The twin engines are the result of resources pooled over a decade by Britain's Rolls-Royce, West Germany's MTU, and Italy's Fiat Aviazione. The BAC F-1 Lightning, like the Vulcan, was the product of a 1947 study contract for a supersonic aircraft. A prototype flew in 1952 and went into service by the middle of the decade. It gave the RAF its first all-weather interceptor with radar, guided missiles, and supersonic performance. Unlike the Vulcan, it was relatively easy to modify and upgrade, and 5 versions later, the F-6 Lightning can compete with most combat aircraft in the world. It has a top speed of over 1,500 miles an hour, and from the ground, it can reach the height of Mount Everest in just over 2 minutes and perform at over twice that altitude. The Lightning, like every other aircraft that has been adapted and improved with age, shows the fundamental importance of a good basic design. Emergence of a new generation of aircraft by potential adversaries convinced the U.S. Air Force that it was lagging far behind in fighter aircraft in the late 1960s. After a major competition, McDonnell Douglas was awarded a contract to develop a new air superiority fighter with an initial order of 730 planes. What emerged was the F-15 Eagle, reputed to be the best fighter aircraft in the world. The fixed-wing, twin-engine Eagle has a speed of over 1,650 miles per hour, Mach 2.5, and can climb at the stunning rate of 50,000 feet, nearly 10 miles a minute. The power of its twin Pratt & Whitney engines afforded a capability that makes a mockery of gravity. Designed as an uncompromising machine for interception and air combat, the F-15 also has formidable attack ability of intercontinental range. It has been ordered for the air forces of Japan, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, in addition to its key role with the U.S. Air Force. One of the most important combat aircraft well into the next century began simply as a technical demonstration of the possibility of building a fighter that was significantly smaller and less costly than the F-15. The U.S. Air Force lightweight fighter program was not intended to lead to production, merely to establish if it could be done and at what cost. The 2 best designs submitted flew an evaluation program in 1974. By that time, 4 European NATO partners, Norway, Denmark, Holland, and Belgium, had expressed a desire to replace their aging fleets with a lightweight, low-cost fighter, and prototype became production. The General Dynamics F-16 was chosen after rigorous competition by the 4 countries, and with a major order from the U.S. Air Force, initial production numbered over 1,500. The single engine of the craft, developed first for the F-15, propels it to over 1,300 miles an hour and to altitudes of 60,000 feet. Conceived as a simple, agile fighter, it has also been successfully employed as an attack bomber. Modern fighters, such as the F-16, are in reality high-performance electronic platforms, bristling with computerized offensive and defensive weapons undreamed of in their First and Second World War ancestors. The only all-new British aircraft in 15 years is the British Aerospace Hawk, a trainer that can achieve near supersonic speeds and an altitude of 50,000 feet and has already climbed to success. The Hawk has gained its widest exposure in the hands of Britain's aerobatic sensations, the Red Arrows. The 9-plane Red Arrows team of the Royal Air Force is the standard by which all other precision aerobatic groups are judged. Their Hawk trainer first went into service within 2 years of its first flight, a rare feat in modern aviation. In addition to the RAF, the Hawk is in service with air forces in Finland, Indonesia, and Kenya. The U.S. Navy has ordered 300 as its prime basic trainer through the end of the century, selecting it above American and European competition. The Hawk's reliability and economy were cited as the determining factors. The Red Arrows graphically attest also to its performance and power. The Red Arrow's Hawk is the latest in a long litany of excellence that goes all the way back to Kitty Hawk. Spad, Fokker, Sopwith, Spitfire, Hurricane, Mustang, Vulcan, Lightning, Eagle. The airplane has soared above the things that inspired it. Above the birds, above the clouds, above it all.